Most of the people talking about the tariffs topic are extremely ignorant and don't understand a single piece of economics. A lot of Trump's policies are foolish, but tariffs are a masterful gambit, a move that kills all the pawns, the bishops, the rooks, and makes 8 queens at the same time. I would call the measures taken by Trump a shock therapy. It's a complex of extremely painful strikes, intended to resuscitate the patient that cannot be saved by conservative measures. The American economy has been overly heated, rather by financial bubbles than by real production. In order to fight the inflation and burst the bubbles before they grow too large, the ballast must be thrown away to give the healthy part of America an opportunity. The Buffett indicator already lost 37% since Trump's inauguration and may continue to lose it. The real target of a competent management should be the growth of the GDP, not that of the stock market. Let's take a broader look and talk strategically about the policy. Trump practically kills all the enemies of the United States at once. Russia and Iran, while not being under tariffs and not being able to be influenced by tariffs due to the low amount of trade with the United States, anyway, suffer bigly. And at the end you'll understand why. The main target, the Asian region and the European Union. Firstly, about Asia. Starting with the end of the 20th century, so-called Asian tigers started to overthrow Euro-Atlantic dominance. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and others became so economically and technologically advanced that the Reagan administration was forced to kill the economy of Japan in order to just let American manufacturers continue their existence. Now, thanks to Clinton's and Bush's useless administrations, we've slept through the new rising colossus, China, and are forced to deal with the monster using shock measures. It's worth mentioning that any Asian country in perspective can become like China, and moreover, any country in the world can. It's important to remember that freedom and peace shouldn't be taken for granted. They're fought for and achieved with significant material or even human sacrifice. Now what Trump does is curbing the growth of Asian economies, and especially China. Their stock markets are in a free fall, reaching double figures, as their main export partner is now effectively raising the prices for their goods from 10 to 54%. This at the same time kills the oil demand, since Asia is the main consumer of the black gold, and having their economies in recession or without a country to consume their industrial output, the amount of oil bought by them will shrink significantly. Less demand means the oil producers will lower the prices to attract some new demand, eventually hitting Russian and Iranian economies, which are reliant on oil exports. Lower prices are virtually unacceptable for the respective countries' budgets, making it impossible for them to wage aggressive wars, and in the case of Iran, to protect itself against the USA and Israel, cutting the funds to support the so-called axis of resistance. This disables 2 main Chinese proxies while still hurting the Chinese economy with the tariffs. The next dish is the European Union, whose stock markets also have fallen over double figures. J.D. Vance came to Europe not long ago with a speech about the Western values, but Europeans are almost invincible to that kind of piercing. Every time we see that a right-wing politician wins in Europe, he doesn't really change the situation, as the political landscape in Western Europe is too left-wing, and their parliaments simply block any initiative. We don't mention Eastern Europe, where low tax and anti-immigration policies are common as a default, but rather about states like France, Germany, and so forth. These economies live too long in a state of sleeping, with the taxes and regulations raised above the sky, short work weeks, long vacations, and other delights of life, available to them only because the United States allows them to have small military budgets, protecting them with the American armor. In this case, the shock measure of the tariffs is intended to wake up Europe from its long lethargic sleep by virtually beating it. The only way you can make this patient stand up for himself when the true threats will come under its door is by beating him playfully, like installing a vaccine. A vaccine works like a weak version of a real virus, allowing the organism to adapt to the virus and build an immune system. And the same way it works here. Attacked playfully by its ally, Europeans will be prepared for the real fight with Russia, Iran, China, and later Turkey. No time left for careful and gradual steps. This should have been done 20 years ago. The time is over. Ultimately, All these measures underscore the strategical path that the Trump administration is pursuing, destroying China. This strategical goal consists of two parts: revitalizing the West and a full-scale offensive on China. The first part includes waking up Europe and refreshing the American economy by lowering taxes and regulations and crushing the foreign competitors. The second part is about bashing the proxies of China and hurting it and its crucial sales markets with tariffs. And I would emphasize that Asian countries and the EU, as well as the USA, are the drivers of Chinese growth. And with them being in recession, China will dramatically lose its potential to grow, if not fall into a depression without the ability to export the vast amount of goods. And I haven't even brought up the gigantic tariffs on China directly yet in the second part. Another interesting thing is the strategy includes the world after China, establishing a platform against the countries that will rise after the Chinese fall to prevent another war. Japan is largely contained economically, and Turkey will be contained by the awake EU and westernized Iran. Overall, my characterization of the decision: that is a brilliant gambit of Donald Trump, close to the level of a maestro, virtuoso, and a genius, although not being one. Despite the aforementioned facts, Trump's policy is far from ideal. The tariffs could be calculated more rationally, to flexibly attack the needed countries and industries, not hurting some of the countries without a reason. Chinese could have been tariffed far more. Iran could have been destroyed faster, etc. It's the factor of Trump being too merciful and arrogant at the same time that is preventing us from a majestic and glorious golden age, and simultaneously driving us from the stagnation of boring and indecisive politicians before the Trump era. When I started editing the video, Trump issued a 104% tariff on China, while China answered with 118% tariffs, virtually making trade between the countries impossible. I was afraid that the second Trump term would be the same as the first, without any real decisions changing the planetary landscape. Nevertheless, the recent action proved my concerns wrong. What we observe here objectively is the end of the current world order, based on free trade theoretically and Chinese-American trade practically. It's the world created after the collapse of the Soviet Union, when the USA as the hegemon established free or almost free trade, allowing the goods to circulate freely, significantly boosting the world economy overall. In fact, globalization primarily helped the poor countries to increase their GDP per capita, rather than the developed ones, as the developed ones lost their industry by moving it to China and other cheap labor countries, and therefore lost a lot of the middle class, as the jobs started paying less compared to the rent and other expenses. It is as simple as that. They stopped paying high salaries to Americans and Europeans. Instead, they used cheap labor. It didn't cause unemployment because of the internet and computer jobs' arrival, but lowered real wages significantly. It is the main reason why in the 1960s you could buy your first house at 25 years and feed 5 kids having a regular job. But now you can't even afford the rent sometimes. Labor market works like any other market. If there is low demand for American workforce, the salaries will be lower. You can be against or for tariffs, but that is objective truth now. The neoliberal system is over. We're entering some new era, yet to be defined and developed. That's why Trump's tariffs were so random and harsh. What he is trying to do is by any measure destroy the remnants of a practically already dead system, to clean the space for a new one to arise. China is an enemy of the free world and must be crushed by any means. If waiting any longer, consequences may be fatal. China is a digital concentration camp with a social rating system and the desire to project this model to the entire world, subjugating weak countries by trade and loans, cultural expansion, and other means of hybrid warfare. In case they decide to attack Taiwan, the biggest center of chip production, the life as we know it will be ended. And if we decide to surrender Taiwan in order to avoid the destruction of chips and save our lifestyle, then China will eventually conquer not only Taiwan, but the entire world, and your children will live as slaves to the Communist Party of China, like Uyghurs, collecting cotton somewhere. The last update before editing, Trump paused the tariffs and made 10% tariff on all countries, but China, where the tariff is 125% at the moment. That's what I was talking about a few minutes ago. Now he will issue more flexible tariffs on the EU and the Allies after he successfully scared them, while still killing China. That is just an improved version of the aforementioned global strategy.